Hey everyone, I have not yet made a video that describes how I got where I am with interpretation. It took a long time to get here, but a lot of people sometimes don't care. They're just like, yeah, I see what you're getting at. I like that. But I think somebody that's really seriously mentally looking for this process and how to do it would want to know that. It's probably not as big an interest video, but it's strange because I found something so consistent that I believe it's right. And it doesn't come from academia. It's something you find on your own. It's discoverable. But it took a long time to get here. I want to talk about that process a little bit because it looks to me like this template, this monomyth template was once well known and very well established, but we've kind of lost touch with it. So what I'm doing is seeing similar patterns. Well, anyway, I'll get to that point. Okay, so I start off in life going to church. I was in a Christian home, so I knew of Jesus. I didn't remain a Christian. There are a lot of family reasons why that was the case, but I left Christianity, and later on in life, I'm looking for answers because I'm a hurt soul. I'm looking for things to resolve, and Jesus never did help, so I'm not looking there. And I'm in Okinawa, Japan, because I joined the military to get an education, and I was in Okinawa for 3 years, and while I was there, down the street from where I lived was this little Buddhist place. It was actually an old house that was just converted, donated or something. Anyway, I went in there, and there was one person in there, a younger monk that spoke a little broken English that I worked with a little bit. And he would always just tell me, make the verse about me, make the verse about me. And I couldn't quite figure that out. But those are data points you gather along the way. I didn't stick with it. Married life kind of falls apart. Life goes on. I'm not on any path, off and on, off and on. At some point later on, though, in more recent times, I have opportunity to just really get into it. For some reason, it fascinates me, the whole religious idea there. What I learned in Buddhism as I'm reading it and I'm learning about karma and things like that, my first thoughts are, wow, that kind of sounds like what I remember from Jesus' teachings. The measure you mete unto others will be likewise meted unto you. Do unto others, that sort of a thing. This reciprocity idea that karma was that. And I thought, oh, Jesus teaches that. It just sounds differently, but you can tell it's the same thing. And little bits and pieces like that are the first things that emerge. And it doesn't mean very much beyond that. You just think, that's interesting. Everybody spots that, but how far do we go beyond that? But I am in a job where I am really isolated. I've got hours and hours of isolation where I'm driving by myself and working by myself. This goes on for a long time. So I have a lot of opportunity to just work things through in my head. And what I do is I start realizing gradually that there's things that play out in the mind and that we become parts in some cases of that teaching. That if I'm reading something from Buddha about a wheel coming around and around following the foot of the ox that's drawing the cart and that pain comes around with it, that's not easy at first to recognize that there's a cycle happening there. Pain comes around as long as you've had this evil thought that there's something there. But even then, when you're doing that, you think, well, okay, I'm not thinking evil things, but bad stuff still happens. That transition isn't quite made as to what they're doing. You're still playing it out in the physical world and not in the psychological world. Also, they're using analogous terms, and sometimes those terms don't make any sense. You read something and go, I don't know what they're getting at. That's a weird thing. I have to figure that out. Other times it might make perfect sense. You need to fast. Okay, that means I should stop eating. When in the spiritual world, it means quiet your mind, stop taking things in. So we don't know that transition is there at first. You can say, you can read some stuff as literal and go, oh yeah, you just do this. Not realizing that everything is an analogous term, not at first. I don't know that. And you know what? I see common examples of this. You can go just go search for anything about naked in the Bible and see what scholars and biblical scholars and ministers, everybody taking a shot at trying to explain how this nakedness happens and why they're trying to clothe them in the shame and all that stuff. In the spiritual world, covering yourself with garments is akin to hiding things. If you have nothing to hide, If somebody can know everything about you and you've got nothing that you can't talk about, you're naked. If there are things you are hiding, you have garments on, they're not making that transition. They're still trying to figure out why people are naked and getting drunk and doing stuff back then. What I realize in working with like Buddha and Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching and the Dhammapada, that these are very short verses that are not this long drawn out story or anything like that. They're just short, compact little verses that contain some kind of components or elements or something in there. Empty. The empty inside of the house is what is valuable. The walls make it all up, but it's the inside that gives it its purpose. The things like that you're reading and going, I'm not quite sure what it is. Eventually, here's what comes online. Everything that they're using is an analog for you. You are that part. So in that verse where it's the walls that make up the house, but the emptiness inside that gives it its purpose. I am the house, and it is what I have inside of me that creates my world. When managed in the psyche this way, you see an exact parallel from Jesus, that you are supposed to wash the inside of the cup because the one who made the outside also made the inside. I'm the cup, and I made the inside of the cup through my life experiences. I need to clean it out. I'm the one who put what was in there. Okay, so then we got Buddha, who has a first teaching right off the bat that all that we are is a result of what we have thought. And if we've had an evil thought, that pain continues to follow us like the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. And that pain is following me as long as something bad has happened. And the evil thought even is analogous. You don't realize that at first. You're like, I'm a nice guy. I'm not thinking mean things to people. Why does this stuff keep making me mad? And I am, there's times in life I'm acting out. I get so mad. I've been pretty violent from just things in the past that were not resolved. And you look back on it and go, I have had so many regrets after going through something like that. And you think, what? I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. Something comes out of me that I don't have control over. And after it's done, you realize, man, something is not okay. What the hell? Eventually, I have reason to go see a psychologist and get a hold of some things. And I realized I felt so good later after this. I thought, that's healing. That's it right there. That's what I'm supposed to do. I got to address this stuff I don't want to address. Eventually, what you realize is that everything that you have decided in your life experiences, if you've been hurt in the past and it's not dealt with, that's what's acting out. That the evil thought is not you thinking evil. That's analogous too. Evil thought means bad stuff, something that happened at one point in time. It's evil because the way it acts. It might have been that you were hurt at a moment in time and you have that put away as shame, pain, hurt, anger, something. And that's going to be an evil thought. So it's hard to make that transition because you go, I'm not thinking evil. It's hard to embrace what they're doing until we learn you have to adjust the terminology, that all of the verbs, nouns and verbs they're using are analogous to something inside. Okay, as I read Lao Tzu and the Buddha, I love the material, but I don't have any kind of spiritual reverence to it. I read it as if it belongs to me. I know that this is like, if I'm looking for an answer and I need a guru and I go ask him, what's life about? This is what he's going to tell me right here. These books become the guru. I know that, and I know if I'm talking to one of those two that it's about me. I'm supposed to turn inward and heal myself. It's not about relinquishing it to a higher being. So I learn that it's about me, and it's about me healing myself, and it's about resolving those things. And then as I look back more at Jesus' work, I realize the Sermon on the Plain, the Sermon on the Mount, and the Gospel of Thomas is a collection of those short, compact verses, just like the Dhammapada or the Tao Te Ching. Even though there's a story written with it, the sermons are there initially as standalone, compact things. And they work the same way. Making transitions like what is a soul? You need an empty soul, or spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Ooh, how do you work with that? Analogs. The spirit is what acts out of us. I was talking earlier about things that emerge, demons, stuff like that, the stuff we have to get a hold of which at some point you realize that is not a broken spirit. This is something that I have from my childhood that I don't have resolved. I've got some anger about something that I've put away and I'm not facing it. That's not my soul. That's my memories. That's my mind. That's my subconscious mind. So I'm beginning to make this transition that, okay, they're not talking about a soul or a spirit. They're talking about my mind, my past, my experience. I'm making that transition more. And I'm beginning to read Jesus in a different way too, like Buddha or Lao Tzu, without that reverence. It's like, I'm just going to treat this like material, like textual material, not like something I'm supposed to have reverence with. You'll push it out of your reach if you treat it that way. If you think, oh, this is something magical, mystical, powerful, you're going to put it out of your reach. You need to understand that that's the carrier. That's the carrier case. So we have to get past that and understand that Jesus is a Buddha or a Lao Tzu, written in a way that makes it sound like it's the Son of God, though it's at a different carrying case. The verse is the same style. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the empty of your past. For you will see the kingdom of God. For you will have a wonderful life, a better flow in the Tao. All of it begins to come online when you shift the analogs, play it all out in the psyche. Those are the short verses. You can read Jesus about not being able to put new wine into an old wineskin, or, it won't work out right. You know the verse. You become the wineskin. Your old self, you cannot put new life into your old self. You have to resolve your old self. That's what that means right there. When the garment, the next one, you can't put a patch on a torn garment, an old garment. Otherwise, that won't work either. We can't put something over our hurt. We are the garment. When you have damage and you want to just put a patch over it, that's covering it. It's another version of that. We go to the Gospel of Thomas, and I saw that one fascinated me because it had all of Jesus stuff in there, but there was some more things that sounded different. They were unusual, and I was reading enough things by then to start picking up other patterns very kind of remotely. It was very subtle at first. I started to channel a couple of years ago with that whole Buddha, Jesus, Lao Tzu thing. I got that, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're teaching the same thing. It's all there. I have no idea the extent that I'm still going to run into ahead of me in the next couple of years. I still haven't figured it all out. But you can see what's happening is it's all mentally discoverable. At no point in time am I listening to somebody tell me. People along the way will tell you, no, it means this, it means that. They're not figuring it out. They're not seeing the template. You look at them and go, I'm sorry, you're not seeing what I see. You can't. I know you want to be right, but you're not. You don't see enough. You don't know enough. I can tell you have a very minimal amount. At some point you go far enough along, you realize, oh my God, yeah, everybody that thinks they're right over everyone else doesn't understand it. Once you understand it, you go, holy crap, everybody is carrying this. From everywhere in the world this comes from. And if you believe your religion is right, you're carrying it. You're carrying the template. You're not understanding the template is there. I didn't need to go there, did I? Okay. What should we do, not what we shouldn't do. Okay. And I think a part of it is still just trying to make that transition and make it clear that there's something different going on than the religion that is the carrier. Okay, so as I'm looking through the Gospel of Thomas, I begin to recognize things that appear like they come from Plato or from the Enuma Elish, from the Babylonian creation myth. The 5 beams in Marduk's head, 5 trees in paradise in the Gospel of Thomas. There's some things that are like, these are kind of obscure. I don't see them show up all over the place, but I see them in a couple of places. But then I spot one that's, the Pharisee is like a dog in the manger, for neither does he eat himself, nor does he let the cattle eat, or something like that, the others eat. And I'm like, that sounds familiar. Aesop's fables, dog in the manger. The dog in the manger won't eat, nor does he let the cattle eat. It's 500 years older. I begin to recognize that there's a collection of material that's coming from different places that hasn't quite been sorted or collated yet. It's a blend. And to be quite honest, you just have to visualize this, that I'm looking at I've now transitioned from the short verses from Lao Tzu and Buddha. And you know what? What I'm teaching you right here, if you go to learn Buddhism or go learn Taoism, you won't learn this. Taoism and Buddhism are based on this. They're also lifestyle. Okay, it will get you to the same place, but it does so slower and more gently. This is a very aggressive way to do it. The verses are cryptic. They're meant to be worked through by the person who is on the path and that is looking for answers. The Buddha and Lao Tzu verses are really meant for the person on the path. So it's not going to get the same distribution. Something that has a religious carrier in it that has something different for the population is going to carry the same template, but it's going to enjoy incredible distribution as a result of the case. You can see that once you see the template. Anyway, so I'm continuing to work on this process, and I finally get to a point where I think I can reduce some of the conflict. I'm going through Jesus material, and of course there's that point where he's throwing over tables in the temple and, kicking people out. And that there's another place where he tells you to love your enemy. It's not enough to love your friends and family, because even your enemy does that, but love your enemy as well. These are in conflict. They don't square. So initially, those things are still struggles. But eventually, as I'm going through Jesus material and I'm really looking at the Sermon on the Plain and Sermon on the Mount and looking at those and thinking, boy, those just sound like Buddha and Lao Tzu for some reason. I had focused so much on those two that I was seeing something patterned in Jesus' work that I thought, well, that's bizarre. And I know that Taoism emerged from this template, that Buddhism emerged from this template. Is it possible that, yeah, sure enough, so you start looking through Jesus' work and the stories, and you realize those stories are based on the template material as well, the same internal teaching material. The difference is it went out of your hands in Buddhism or Taoism and got put into God's hands. So that was a transition that I was able to make. You're like, wait a minute, that's me, that's my job to do. So it's about this time that I'm making the transition that they're calling God something else in our ability. And I don't have these 5 trees in paradise, the 5 parts that they're talking about that this is kind of working with once we're in healing. That's going to come about later. There's so many layers to this. But it's just a matter of keep playing it out in the mind over and over again. Actually, in this case, these verses are simple. You look at them and go, yeah, there's not much to that actually. If you break them down like that, an anchored ship will not sail. I'm the ship. If I'm hanging on to something, I can't go free. That sounds pretty simple. But when you transition it into the psyche, it means that whatever I'm holding on to, I'm going to continue to cycle around. I cannot let go of the past. I mean, if I don't let go of the past, if I'm carrying things with me, they're going to continue to emerge in my life. All of the verse works that way in the short ones, and you're like, okay. Now, they're not all that simple. I'm actually very simplifying this. Some of them actually are not about you. They're about what'll happen when you make this trip. People might not like you. You're going to have a difficult time making changes. You're going to have to work things out with people that you've had problems with in the past. You might have to work out issues with people you're living with now. Those are parts of the teaching as well. So not everything plays out in the psyche. Some of it is be ready to, a physician does not heal their family and a scholar does not teach their village or something like that. One of those two. All right. What I want to continually emphasize is that all the time, this is a mental process that I'm working with and I'm playing with and I'm engaging with in my thinking, which is creating an inner change, which then creates an outer change. That is happening. And I realize that's what's being taught in places, but I realize I'm finding a degree of how that works that is different than anything anyone has ever told me before. It's not just about sitting and feeling good. It's about taking those things that you're carrying with you that you don't want to deal with from the past, instead of saying, be at peace with those things. You're going after them and looking at them. And, you look at them and you think of them and you feel the way they make you feel emotionally. And that's what tells you how they're stored. I know I'm getting further down the path. Okay, so the deal is here, I'm just some guy finding this stuff. It's not coming from some authority or something like that. I've always looked for answers, but I would listen to people for a little bit, but it didn't take long before I understood they're not looking for what I'm looking for. They're done, they're happy, they're satisfied, they're heading some supernatural direction that I can't see. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. I cannot interact with that. I don't care how good you tell me this out there is. I'm sitting here now feeling like crap and acting out. Nobody's helping me. This material had to be interacted with, not just carried. Okay, I'm still in the very short verse realm, but I'm learning things like I'm seeing that that material, that the verses from the Tao Te Ching created Taoism, or were the basis for the creation of Taoism. I realized that same patterned teaching, put in different analogous forms, put out by the Buddha in the Dhammapada, is the same pattern. And then Buddhism emerges from that. And you realize that this short piece of work right here is what is the basis for the bigger teachings. And again, so I go, well, can I find this with Jesus's work too? What if it was just, at one point in time, they're passing around compact little, here's the Sermon on the Mount, here's the Sermon on the Plain, or here's the Gospel of Thomas. These are being distributed around, but they're being picked up as, okay, here's that pattern. Somebody's gone this far with it. Let's keep moving it into a religious format, and that's what happens. What's the very first verse? And I'm not going to look these up. We'll just talk about them. The very first verse in the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain is something to the effect of, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," or "Blessed are the poor," depending on which version you read. "For yours is the kingdom of God." The kingdom of God is an analog, spirit is an analog, poor is an analog. All of those are going to be analogous terms. Remember the Lao Tzu verse I said earlier about the house. I am the house. And that what is inside of me is what determines the quality of the structure. It is what is inside that becomes the usable and viable thing. What is inside the shell, not the shell itself. That teaching is there. So we go to Jesus, and what do we have? Blessed are the poor in spirit. The spirit, remember, is going to be something to interact with. It's going to be mental. When we have a lot of stuff up here, it's not poor. It is not an empty house. It is not an empty spirit. It's a house full of stuff. It's a mind full of stuff. The kingdom of God is going to be happiness here now. And if there's a kingdom of God later, it tells you to find it now, not later, not wait till you die to find it. It says find it now, find the happiness, become poor in spirit. And you think, well, okay, where does that show up elsewhere? Watch this. If you come to the altar to leave your gift, and while there you remember that you have aught against your brother, first set your gift down and go reconcile with your brother, and then come back and leave your gift. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you in secret. That's the same thing. Look at it. But it's conceptual. You come to the altar to leave your gift. What for? It's an analog. You come to the altar to leave your gift. You are looking for God's graces. You're looking for a better life. The reason you are here is you're looking for better life. You're bringing a gift to the altar to say, God, please bless me. I'm broke, hungry, angry, beat. And we're being told that while you're there, you remember you've got all those issues and you want a good life. Don't look for God's graces. Set down your gift. Go resolve that stuff first. Then come back and give your gift. And your Father who sees in secret rewards you in secret. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of God. Is a very short, compact version of this, except the other one is telling us also that here's the issue. Not only does this need to be empty, but what you need to do is forgive who you have issues with, or you need to resolve that conflict. Once that conflict is resolved, life flows better, whether it's the Tao from the way of life from the Tao Te Ching taught by the Lao Tzu, or the level of nirvana as taught by Buddha, or the kingdom of heaven within. as taught by Jesus, that these are all going to be analogous to that mental place, and that these are continually structuring that way, and they're continually being held in verbiage that is purposeful, and that it fits a hierarchy. It does have to fit a structure. You're not going to have a story where a son and a daughter influence the mother. You would read something like that and go, that doesn't work in the hierarchy, because the mother is the subconscious. It is what holds things. It has been trained or wired by the level of our conscious experience and how we continue to hold that in our life. And the offspring are the result of that. So if you read something like that, you go, that doesn't work. Whatever is in charge of me does not influence the mother. It might influence the father. It might hurt life. It might do something like that. But you know what? You will have something like a son and a daughter will take over for the father. That would work because this is a new part of you taking over for an old part of you. So there's that hierarchy that becomes difficult to spot at first. You're reading this and wondering, how does it work or not work? I recently did a video where I was looking at some non-canonical writings, and I will post a link to a video I posted a couple months ago where I'm making a comparison. I'm doing there's some non-canonical work, The Shepherd of Hermas and The Letter of Barnabas. And these are in a collection of all material that comes from, this is Jewish and Roman works here. Where does this come from? And as you read them and you look for the template, it is very evident in The Shepherd of Hermas. Whoever wrote The Shepherd of Hermas knew this template, and they structured that teaching on the monomyth. If you go to read The Letter of Barnabas, it's not there. The Letter of Barnabas is somebody's kissing the church's butt. Oh, you Christians, you're so wonderful. I see your life is so joy. I can't, I want to be with you. That is not a monomyth. That's a grasp on the carrier shell. You can read these as you go through them and begin seeing what is viable and what is not viable. And then it's difficult to extract it. You go to the Book of Mormon, you can find parts that are there, but it doesn't fit the template. One of the difficult things, perhaps one of the most difficult things, there's a couple of them that have to do with male, female, or sexual orientation in religious material that really kind of irks me in Christianity anyway. They don't know how to interpret their material, so they just make it whatever they want it to be, whatever their pain is, whatever their shame is, or whatever they've been told by somebody that it's supposed to be. They don't figure it out on their own. They're either following somebody's orders or following their own inner what weeds are growing from those gardens. Okay. From antiquity, one of the easiest analogs to use is the male-female hierarchy. The male was in charge of the female. Look at life, look at society. That became a perfect analog for the conscious over the subconscious. And the people that can't wrap their brains around that today is where you find, oh, look they've got the male in charge of the female here. Is that a part of the structure? No, they're using it literally. They don't get it. But the rest of the stuff, it teaches standard things, but it's a control tactic that doesn't even have the template in it. So here's a religion that was created that became devoid of that teaching. If you're a Mormon, you're not going to find this path in through the Book of Mormon. You won't. You'll find it other places. The Book of Mormon it's a big version of the Letter of Barnabas. Yeah. And I want to emphasize where I'm coming from as far as the spiritual teaching. I don't mean that the religion itself is baloney, because most people need some kind of structure. They're not going to figure this out. Okay, I'm wandering off a little bit with what this video was intended for. It's really how I came about learning that these are, to work them the way that I do. And so you can see that. And then what happens at some point, you're reading all of them, you're using the same technique on all of them, and you realize, boy, the reason I think that it's accurate is because if I read all of them and do the same thing, they all tell me the same thing, that I'm a product of my life experiences in the way that I hold it up here. They're all teaching me that. Is it right? If not, it's so coincidental. I don't see anything else out there lining up with this material. So I think, yeah, it probably is. I still want to watch myself. I start off with a completely open mind. Now I realize the template's there. Am I forcing everything to fit on the template? No, I'm still open-minded. If it doesn't fit on the template, it doesn't fit. I know that it doesn't. Okay, well, at this point in interpretation, I feel pretty confident with the short verse stuff, but I still see big verse story, Genesis, the Enuma Elish, all kinds of other material from antiquity, Hinduism, all of their books. Not just the Bhagavad Gita, but the entire Mahabharata. There's a lot of volumes that are containing this in there. However, the style went somewhere completely different. It went from those short, compact verses to now there's all kinds of characters and people and wonderful things going on and making adventures and traveling from place to place. And you're like, yeah, that's something completely different. I don't see the short verse in there. However, I do understand somehow from early on, I'm always buying into the flood story idea for a long time as a metaphor for starting over. I didn't know how to start over. I just thought it was a rebirth. It made more sense. You look at it and say, you know, the idea that it's literal, the fact that it didn't happen at all, no, it didn't. But there are floods that happen that go through the floodplain that imagine a year of being there, people traveling around on the floodplain and animals dying and pooping. And, you know, it's not like today. They're on foot traveling around in this floodplain. In a year time, it's going to get nasty. Gross. Probably activate your gag reflex. Flood comes through, cleans it out, all out, perfect analog. Hey, if this was me and a flood comes in and cleans it all out, I got to start over again, don't I? Yeah, perfect analog. So I knew that was there. And I knew that it was being shared as an idea. And I don't know how I knew that. It just seemed like if you're logical, you go, it's either that or it's baloney. It's not real. There's something important in there. And they're not using it. They're carrying it. But still, it's not an easy transition because there's too many people. There's too many things. There's stuff going on. And I don't know how I make the transition, but there's at some point where I am working on the Enuma Elish. And I'm recognizing early things in there that sound like Genesis. There's a few things going on, but somehow in that one, it was like a moment of intuition that I had that said, you know what, that person that is that bad person right there, that is your early self. And gradually I grow with this idea that every part, it's the same template. What they've done though, instead of keeping it simple, you must forgive somebody, they add a whole bunch of things into it, turn it into creatures, turn it into a wonderful story, turn it into something else, add more layers to it. It's still doing the same thing. It's just incredibly feature rich. And, you know, just imagine this from a storytelling perspective, a calling. We know that that's the first step. For the monomyth, if you're going to take the monomyth, there's a calling. Everybody goes through creation. Not everybody goes through the calling. If you have the calling, then the monomyth picks up right there for you. And, you know, there's things we have to do. We have to turn inward. We have to go, like reconnect with ourselves. We have to understand that it's us that is the issue and turn inward and begin to deal with them. That's exactly what we have to do. But how do the stories convey that? It might be something as simple as, very few will enter the narrow gate. It might be something from Rumi. I'm going to paraphrase. I apologize. I've been standing on the lip of insanity, knocking, looking for a way. The door opens. I've been knocking from the inside. Clues here to something that turned inward. One was very short. One is beautiful imagery, colorful, Rumi's. We can step that all the way up to escaping Pharaoh and what it takes to get God's help to go through, depart the sea and create it, that all of them are the exact same place on the template. However, They can be simple or they can be big. They don't change the template. They change the steps. They change how much detail is on each step. That's it. But it's still you on each step traveling from place to place. That's the journey. That's the adventure. I turn inward. Well, not yet. I gather up my crew, my people, my whatever it is I need to have along, which are going to be qualities that you need to have. I need my honor, my sense of justice, my balance, my courage, the thing, whatever it is that people are claiming are necessary in the story. You're going to gather those things up. And those are definitely parts of what we have to do to turn inward. But you can see in a storytelling culture, something like that would be much more enjoyable than just, you can't pass the template, number one. It's their media. They got brains like ours. It still fits. I still have to defeat my old self. My offspring are all there. My conscious, my subconscious come into play. Though all those parts of the analogs just become monstrously huge. But it stays exactly the same as everything is an analog, and everything plays out up here. Every bit of it. Every bit of it will fit there. If it ever applies to the outside world, the material says no. Lay yourself up treasures in heaven where moth and dust don't corrupt. This is not about the physical world. It's about our inner mental world. Anyway, then as you go along, you realize that these things that are happening represent parts of your life. When you're little, you're this person, you're happy. Then something happens and you become bad. Now you're evil. But later on, you're going to go on the hero's journey and your new self is going to go defeat your old self. You start going, yeah, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're adding characters in that are all still just different parts of us that they can sequence up. Here is you at this point. Oh, and when you're having this thought, you're this person. Then when you said, no, I don't want to do that, you're the counter to that. You got the male and female version of that going on. Those things are in there, and you go, holy smokes. There are things that seem like conflict. In the Bible, the one where Jesus is asked how come his disciples don't fast while John's and the Pharisees do, and then Jesus goes into that thing about the wine. No, actually, he starts off saying something about the bride chamber, the children of the bride chamber, and that. So you're like, wait a minute, are you answering that question or not? It looks like a kludge. You read it and go, but it's doing something. John's and the Pharisees' disciples represent the Pharisees are the people that carry the Bible that don't understand what is in there. That's how they're being structured. Seeker, I'm finding how to use the material. Everybody carrying it, non-seeker. Everybody denying it, non-seeker. Very few people are the seeker that are going to be using the material for finding what is in there. If we're going to hammer the analogs to the nth degree, anybody who is a Christian is a Pharisee. They're teaching the carrier shell. They're the Pharisees. And that doesn't mean anything bad. It's the way to carry the template. It just means seeker and non-seeker. We can see that in that verse that I mentioned previously about the dog in the manger, or the Pharisee is like the dog in the manger, consuming, eating. We want a spiritual world. We want knowledge. We want information. We need to consume from this. The Pharisee is not only not consuming it themselves because they don't know it's there, but they're not feeding it to us either. What that means is that's telling us, hey, pay attention. Something different in there for you. If you're the one, there's something different in there. Don't follow. The material then becomes the guru. That's what's important here. I want to stress that at no point in time does anybody go, let's go follow Dan. It doesn't work like that. You don't follow people. I don't follow anybody. You follow the material. You follow the intuition, the instinct, the experience. This material and your choice. And what I know what I'm doing right now is finding it and pointing it out. But I realize that the only way this material is effective is when a person grabs it, the knowledge, makes the decision, turns inward, and begins to address those things that they need to address that they don't want to. You will only follow yourself if you take this path. The path is there specifically to address the life experiences and belief systems and the understanding that we showed up without a wired brain, and that what we are is a product of how our life experiences were put away, and that if that's not a good thing, this is how to extract from it, and it's not easy. But it's in the mind. Who makes that trip? Who goes in your mind and fixes things for you? Yeah. When you make this trip, you're not following anybody but you and the material and your own courage. Although I can say sometimes the courage actually only comes about after exasperation. Sometimes you got to hit bottom or something. It's got to become serious for the person. And if it's not, it's there all the time. Okay, so the Pharisee can be sitting here reading from the Bible, remembering it's a culture of, we don't read and write. There's very few things around. So you need to not only have somebody read it to you, but tell you what it means. So the Pharisees are reading the stuff and telling you what it means. The minister is reading the Bible and telling you what it means. The person that grabs it and listens and knows what is in there can sit and listen to that reading and go, I'm extracting that from this story, while the person telling the story never knows it's even there. How amazing is that? Okay, we'll go back to our the Pharisees. How come John's and the Pharisees' disciples wash their hands, but Jesus's do not? And then he goes off on the bride chamber thing and the wine and the wine skins and the coat on, the cover on the jacket. And you look at that, and the bizarre nature of it should get one's attention, because it doesn't sound like it flows. But what it's doing in the first verse is it's pointing to the back. They're all analogs. So John and the Pharisees, all this represent the non-understanding part of this teaching. Remember, John is baptizing people in the flesh. That's like going to church and being baptized there. The Pharisees represent the people who are telling you, after reading this cryptic-sounding weird stuff, here is what it means, and here is how we develop 33,000 different Christian denominations, because the interpretation is going to be all over the place when people aren't using a fixed set of rules and they're looking outward to the outer world. So John and the Pharisees represent the Ark of the Covenant. It's carried by many, looked in by few. There's a lot of similar things like that in here, that there's not going to be a lot of people that get it, but it's being carried by, it's being very purposefully carried. Somebody cleverly, very cleverly put that in. Okay. Then what happens? Okay, the marriage has to happen, that you have to get rid of everything that's in there first. This represents the conscious and the subconscious getting back together, getting rid of the things that have us divided, so we don't have to sit there at any point in time and go, why did I do that? Why do I do these things? We need to get rid of that stuff. That is a divorce between our conscious life and our inner life, our male and our female. Analogously, the female is acting out because of the way that conscious decided that was going to be and put it away that way. So now the female has no choice but to act out in the manner that was given to her by the thought process. So the first thing it tells us to do is that we have to wait for the guests to leave the bride chamber. When they're gone, then we can have a marriage, which represents us. We have to leave the past behind. If we're wanting to leave issues behind, we have to resolve those issues. We have to disengage from them to start with. But that in this case, guests are not something that you want. You want these gone. These are the things that became a part of who and what we are, that we can now get rid of them. The hurt, the pain, the shame, stuff like that. They're guests. And seriously, look, as long as they're there, we can't have the marriage. These are things that are preventing the marriage. Then in order to have that marriage, what it tells us to do is we become the wineskin. We can't put new life into our old self. We have to have a new wineskin before we can put new wine in. Otherwise, it doesn't work. We can't put a patch on a garment that's old, that we're trying to cover something up. We have to uncover. This is telling us right here that we need to shift from the past and outward looking to inward looking, and we need to heal ourselves. Bingo. It just unfolds like that. And it does so with such consistency across the board that you go, oh my God, that's got to be right. And I don't just mean consistency here. I mean consistency when you go all over the place. The big stories are there. Greek myth are based on that big story format. They don't have the short verse. Not in the mythology. There are definitely Stoic material. Yeah, it's pretty succinct. It's this teaching. It's not on this pattern, but it's very straight up. Forget the stories. Just do this. I got other things to do. Heal yourself. I don't think they had the culture that embraced and conditioned ourselves with such shame and guilt as Abrahamic descended religions tend to do. They're very fear and guilt based. It's harder to work through some of that stuff. What else do I have going on? Okay, you know what? The 5 trees in paradise. Let me just get away from this terminology. And anybody who wants to argue about this one, this is how you navigate the material. This is how the material navigates. It's not about 5 senses. You can't navigate this material if you bring 5 senses into it. There are 5 mental components that we're using. First of all is the higher self. There's a part of us that we should be able to get to where you can stand outside of yourself and outside of life and look at it from a detached, not emotionally connected mental place. Can you get there? We all have that. We were born with that. We didn't have any way to process it. We didn't have life experience yet to judge that with, but we lived within that higher being. And then as life came on and we began having physical experiences, we began to live through the physical experiences without ever having the awareness of the higher being. Now we're at a point in time in life where we're aware of that. We need to get back to that. What has happened is that we have had life experiences that are stored between us and that mind, and that those are causing our life to continue to unfold the way it is. So here we have the higher self. That is God. That is whoever is doing the guiding. There's the conscious mind. The conscious mind is the one that makes the decisions, that has the experiences. There's the subconscious, the female. Depending on the material, the female may be something that has to be destroyed and replaced, or is always something that is there that has to be. It's not the female that is always the problem. It is the offspring. As they're layering it deeper, oh, yeah, what happens is actually the conscious and the subconscious have, there's some sort of an experience, a physical experience that we have consciously. We store that away in our subconscious, which is the female part, but that stored component right there, whatever that memory is the issue. And we can have multiple of them. We can have multiple experiences. They can get stronger, bigger. They exist as a certain frequency. That is what the issues are going to be, and they're going to continue to emerge. So we have higher being, conscious, subconscious, the offspring of the decisions between, or the interaction between the conscious and the subconscious that are the issues that the higher being must help the conscious go back and readdress. And then there is a field that we flow in, a collective. We sense this with our central nervous system and our brain. We feel, we sense, we interact, but it's very nebulous. It looks mysterious. It's from the great beyond. It's coming into our consciousness through not one of our 5 senses. It's coming into our consciousness randomly sometimes. It's not very strong. Sometimes you get gut feelings or instincts. I've had a very strong experience as a youngster, hearing in my mind, Larry's dead. Very purposefully stopped me in my tracks. It's a couple of minutes before I found my brother, who indeed was dead, and he was by himself. This is something that transferred somehow. There was something there, and what does that look like? It looks like magic. I don't think it is. We live in a structured universe. And we're doing things that are natural, and if we don't look at them for what they are, I don't think we're going to interact with them very well. what happens is that as we live life, that the quality of this experience that is tucked away up here begins to dictate our flow through that life, where we end up with, who we end up with, what our experiences continue to be. It's as if we want to flow through life, but all these things continue to be these little experiences that pull us off course. And we need to resolve those. They're thought processes that require forgiveness or a change in energy or a transmutation. It's going to be across the board. There's going to be a lot of ways of saying it. And here's what it comes down to. You had an experience and you have an emotional attachment to that experience. What is the quality of that emotional experience? That's what dictates life. And if you want to change life, you have to change the way that emotional experience is, which means if it is shame or pain or something like that, that is what is the issue. That's why it's hard. Yeah, imagine somebody, a kid being, raised, raped, molested, abused sexually by family members, and then living a life later that is horrific and acting out and having experiences that are out of control because these issues become unresolved. That's just one example. We're all different. That wasn't mine, but I use mine a lot, so I'll try to come up with some variations. Okay, that's it. Those 5 components are there. As you're going through the big stories, that's where those template parts fit. You got a subconscious you turn into, but that's all the story. But the 5 parts that are in use in the stories are those 5 parts. And everything is going to fit there. If there's a lot of people, it's typically going to be the female. Well, it'll be the conscious, the female, and the offspring. Those are the ones that continue to vary. Your old self, your new self, your old stored things, your new stored things. All of those are what it's going to be that this story is holding. That's where it fits. You know what? I had to go back and make a correction. This is in monotheistic material where only one thing fits in the higher being. In other material that is not monotheistic, all of the gods and all of the things that descend from the higher realm that come down are up there. So it depends on the material. It'll vary on you and keep you on your toes. And you see the structure of that is a hierarchy with a result, a flow. That flow is going to be the Tao, the way that you flow through life, your experience. That is how you live in the graces of God. All analogous for how your life experience is going to be. Greek, eudaimonia, the overall quality of your life. And I want to very specifically say right there, I mean the emotional quality of your life, not the physical quality of your life. How happy are you? And then you're going to see things like, all of the, when the Anunnaki and fallen angels or things like that, when you see at parts of the story where they are being trapped, somehow rendered unable to have any more power, but you can't get rid of them. That represents the memories, but you've rendered the memory ineffective. You've taken away its power, but it's still there. It just gets huge. It doesn't need to be for us. Look at our life compared to theirs. That's another thing, is that we have modern biases that make it difficult for us to see what they're doing. These stories is what they are living through. We're sitting here watching media. They're looking at stone walls, the shadow passing. These stories, I think, would be huge, and we don't give them what they deserve. There's more to them. For me, a couple of things I think that it is pattern recognition, and humans are very good at pattern recognition. We see patterns. But then when you think about it, the universe is patterns. So we should be very aware of patterns. It's just a matter of looking at them and being interested in them and being focused on them. And then in this case, what I had was access to whatever I wanted. How fortunate are we to be able to just sit and Google up whatever we want to live in a place where we have the freedom to read what we want and to look what we want, look at what we want to. Well, I know a lot of people use that for the wrong thing, but you can use it for the right thing. Okay, let me think what else. So we got the 5 component parts. That's the way the stories work. This is how I figured it out over time. It was gradually putting those pieces and parts as I'm driving along, taking the story and going, wow, where do they fit? And then realizing that that hierarchy is there. The higher self, the conscious, the subconscious, the offspring. That hierarchy is maintained all the time. Watch that. I think that's it. I think that this is something that is mentally discoverable, but a person has to work it out on their own. And that's what I'm interested here, is not necessarily decoding everything, but wanting other people to decode. Imagine having somebody that's like all over Greek myth get into this, or Hinduism, or anything, yeah. I think this could be really big as a fun thing, but, I don't know at the same time how popular is it? People aren't going to just go, oh, gee, I want that. Sometimes I think that, oh, people are going to want to hear this. They don't. Our heads work differently. Somehow we don't get it. Or they don't get it. We don't get them. They don't get us. We're different. Yeah, you see it. Okay, that was it. I just wanted to say that this is a mental process. It's always been a mental process, and that this was something that was just done by playing it out, having the right life experience, the right mind, the right access to material, and the right lifestyle, which allowed me to continue to play it over and over again, and then just an interest in it. But then realizing after doing that it is simply something that could have been passed along. You could look at this and go, wow, this could be taught. That's what the supernatural aid is in the stories. It's learning what this is and how to use the material to access the story to navigate your psyche for healing. There's nothing supernatural, but you have to know what to do. It emerges from the stories, but it's really just, for me, it was pattern recognition. That was it. And of course, having the fortunate life experience that gave me the opportunity to navigate it frequently, so I got to know it experientially, which helps me see it much better. So there's that. But I think it's something that if it was pointed out to people, they would be all over it. That certain people would be, oh, that's it. Yeah. By golly, you found it. Let's go take a look. Okay. Hope this video was enjoyable. It's different. It's not an interpretation video. It's really trying to let you know that it is a manageable mental process, accessible to anybody who wants to do it. And that it's right there. All the material holds it. You grab it, you turn it inward. And you understand the template, and you understand that they're using analogs from whatever their culture is. Babylonia, Egypt, desert. Roman. They're using analogs of their time. They're changing it to sound okay for their people, but that template is still there. They're upping the ante on the carrier shell along the way. It emerges as something more powerful, more distributable. And sadly dangerous. The thing is that the instructions for doing this is contained right in the New Testament. This pathway is there to the person who knows it's a spiritual teaching and to convert it. And you know what? That's only partially true. There could be somebody who is a Christian that is an absolute 100% believer in God and Jesus and the entire story. However, reads through Jesus and understands forgiveness means let all of that go. resolve all of those issues, if they go through and do that, they're going to experience the power of God. They're going to be convinced that's what it is. They're going to experience the change. Yet Christianity has this clause that if you simply believe, it becomes very loose. And you know, it's weird. Sometimes I think, oh, Jesus is not coming back to save the Christians. My question is, how do we save him from them? They got him made out to be a bad guy. Oh, anyway, not all of them. I shouldn't say it like that in a blanket format, sort of a way. I do get a little bent out of shape about life and what I see happening on the planet, and it bothers me. I mean, you see things you just don't want to see, but you see them anyway, and you're like, damn, there's nothing I can do. It's hard to watch the scope and the scale of what is happening and realizing the futility of. I mean, how do you feel? Okay, you have to pull back, but it doesn't change anything. It's like, God, it doesn't work. You can't pull back from the inevitable. I think that I think humanity is getting too big. That we're in very much a tribal survival sort of a mode, but at the same time, we've grown to the capacity of wreaking some havoc on ourselves. And the blindness and the denial of that is going to drive us beyond and the religious ideology in many cases allows for a mindset that this is just a temporary place. And that's not okay. The masses are in charge of and comfortable with what they're doing. You know, no one person's going to make a difference. You're not going to go out and plant a tree and change the world. It's what's happening is it's like a plane falling out of the sky and you're watching it. Nobody else is looking out the window. It's coming. So I find that to be bothersome. I don't want to look at it too close. Religion is not the issue, but religion allows the issue. And the way that the analogs are written and dated are horrific to the way people are today that are not understanding or even caring to understand. They're simply acting out their feelings. I wanted to do a video on free speech, but I think I don't want to. You know what I have a problem with in free speech? I love the idea. The problem is this, that whatever we focus on with intensity grows. We become more and more of it. And when people are talking, when free speech comes to the point of hate speech being free speech, and that we should be able to be allowed to stand here and express our anger and hatred towards that group or that group for our own reasons here or there, that in doing that and in practicing that, it's actually amplifying, it's growing, it's getting bigger. It's going to escalate. That's the way it works. That's bothersome. Well, pretty bad timing, huh? Sorry for the downer. All right, what can I talk about to bring that up a little bit? I wanted to explain a little bit my mood swings sometimes. Some of it has to do with unresolved issues, for sure. Some of it has to do with looking at things that I realize are issues that I can't resolve. And that it's not just bad for a group, but it's bad for a humanity. It's bad for a planet. It's embraced ignorance. It is being very selfish, actually. As long as I'm happy now, I don't care what happens. This is just temporary. That's selfish as hell. Why don't people err on the side of, oh, just in case, maybe we better take care of what we got? Well, because that's not selfish, is it? That's humanity. I went dark again. Huh? Okay. Sorry, everybody. I need to do this. You know what? I got an idea for a video where I talk with my wife. Make a comment below if you think this is a good idea. She and I have had to use this material to prepare. We've had issues. We've had to work on things. We saw cycles. We saw things happening. We used the material to engage with that and help affect a change in our life. If you're interested in that, I'd be happy to do that. She's a little shy, but I can talk her into it. Anyway, all right. Yeah, leave a comment below if you got this far. Love one another. I'll see you in the next video.